you have now gone on to build an institute and work with the world's leading brands and teach everybody things from reading faster to better memory to being present. It is incredible because when I hear your story and I then think about how much you've accomplished and how many lives you've changed, I go, well, if Jim with his broken ass brain can do it, I can certainly improve my brain. Yeah. If he can understand how to leverage the capacity of his brain to help him achieve his goals, then I bet I can.
I truly believe that an individual's ability to adapt, to learn, to unlearn, to relearn is one of the most important things that people could invest in. Because if there was a genie could grant you any one wish, but only one wish, everyone would wish for limitless wishes, right? If there was a learning genie that could help you become an expert in any one subject or any one skill, what would the equivalent be of asking for limitless wishes? Would it be learning coding? Would it be learning to be able to speak another language? It'd be learning how to learn. Because if you can learn how to learn, focus, think, read, retain, apply, you could apply that towards everything: medicine, marketing, money, motivation, martial arts, and anything gets easier, right? Because it's a lead domino. It's the one thing you hit, and everything gets, you sharpen that saw, which is your mind. So I really think that this is this technology. We always hear everyone got the new iPhone and upgraded their apps and get the new devices, but when's the last time we took time to upgrade?
So, Jim, I want to just take a second and talk to the person listening. And as you're listening to Jim, I want you to now make this really personal. Let's put what Jim's telling us to the test, okay? And I'm going to go first because here's what I'm thinking on behalf of both you and me. Jim, how the heck can I and the person listening upgrade the brain? Can you give us simple tricks? Because here's the thing, I'm already overwhelmed. And between the ADHD, the menopause, the 3 kids, all the stuff that I'm forgetting all the time, I mean, how am I going to also add upgrading my brain to the list? And look, I don't have a story that I have a broken brain. And for you listening, I don't know what your story is, but I can see that I have a belief about my brain that is limiting. And I believe that I'm always just going to be forgetful. I believe that I have a hard time remembering names. I believe that it is impossible for me to learn a foreign language because I'm dyslexic. I believe that I'm overwhelmed and I'm just going to be overwhelmed, that my thoughts are going to spin. And now that I'm saying all this, Jim, I realize that I have a lot of limiting beliefs. And as you're listening, I do want you to stop and think about what is your limiting belief. Do you think you're not smart? Are you like me and you're like, I can't learn a language, or I'm not good with math? Or here's another limiting belief of mine. I have menopause, and everything that I'm learning is that your brain fog is something that comes with menopause. So am I still going to be able to upgrade my brain with menopause and all this stuff that I'm telling myself? Seriously? Like an iPhone, Jim?
So the good news is I would say yes.
Well, that's encouraging.
So we have students in our online academy in the same 194 countries. We get a lot of feedback and we have a lot of data.
Okay.
I've had the honor of sharing stage with you many times. If there's time, I'll do these demonstrations where they'll pass around a microphone in an audience and introduce themselves, and I'll memorize like 50 or 100 people's names, right? Or they'll challenge me to remember 100 numbers or words, and I'll do it forwards and backwards. But I always tell people, I don't do this to impress you. I do this to express to you as possible. Because the truth is, we could all do that. We just weren't taught, right? It's a skill. If you go to somebody like your kids and you say, focus, memorize this, study, that's the equivalent of going to somebody saying, play the ukulele, who's never taken a class on how to play the ukulele before. But we didn't have a class called Focus, right?
Oh, I just had a huge breakthrough. Oh my God, I think I got it. The ukulele example is exactly, that just cracked the code for me, Jim.
Yeah.
All of the education that we have had has been for the purpose of absorbing something to spit it back out and then moving on to the next thing that you're going to absorb and spit back out. And what you're basically saying is that you became an expert at figuring out the skill of learning and of memory retention. That's probably my daughter calling me. You know what? This is a good sign, Jim. It's always a
Yeah, it's
great
a sign.
episode when one of my kids FaceTimes me in the middle of it. So, but I just got it. Like, that's what you're teaching us.
Like we were taught how to read, but when's the last time we took a class called reading? We were like 6 or 7. So we, even if we learned a skill, we haven't updated that skill. I feel like, and the difficulty and demand of our reading has increased exponentially, but how we read is the same. So that growing gap creates a lot of stress, information anxiety. So skill acquisition is important. I do believe that genius is not so much born, genius really is more built.
Hey, it's Mel. And you know what? I want you to stop thinking about what you want and watching videos on YouTube and actually go out into your life and do something about it. Because action is the answer. And the first action you should take is jump into my brand new free training. It's called Make It Happen. This training gives you the tools to go from thinking to doing. It's packed with science. It comes with a free workbook. And it's exactly what you need right now. More than 500,000 people are taking it. And the fact is, you do have the power to change your life. And I want to help you. All you have to do is click in the link in the caption or go to melrobbins.com/makeithappen. It's free. You jump right in. I'm going to be your coach. I created it for you. Why wouldn't you take this opportunity to make your life better? Go do it. Do not miss out on the life you could be living. Let's make it happen together. I want to talk about the how. How can we turn inward and start to hear this little voice and then do the deeper work to follow that thread to what the weight may be that you can process from your past to free yourself?
I think the starting place is always just a curiosity about ourselves. And a lot of times, just as a person doesn't want to go look at the trauma, why do I want to go look at that thing that makes me nervous? Or that works very strongly against our curiosity about ourselves. And if we are sort of free to be curious about ourselves, it's not dangerous or threatening to be curious about ourselves. There's so much that we can learn. So just an example can be, what is my self-talk like? What do I say to myself, right? In quiet moments, what do I say to myself if I do something wrong? Or what do I say to myself if I drop something? What do I say to myself if I approach a new social situation or a new challenge? So we become curious about we can become curious about what is going on inside of us. And now we start to put words to things. And sometimes we can do that. We can do it sometimes just by thinking, but it's what we think can kind of go over and over again sometimes in our mind without being super productive. It's not always like that. But when we put it outside of us, it's different, which is why if we're talking to someone, that can make a difference, a trusted other about, hey, I was thinking about, like I'm saying this to myself over and over. I realize it's been going on in me for years. Or can we say that to someone else, or can we write it? Writing it down, journaling can make a big difference in that way. And the talking to another person can involve a therapist. I think if someone is having, of course, thoughts that they don't want to be alive anymore, or thoughts that start to be quite severe, then that person should get help, because we want to understand and make sure that we're maintaining safety. So there is a place where professional help is important and is needed. In many situations, say it's not to that level of severity where it's needed for safety, but it can dramatically help us inquire with ourselves. So there's another person who's trained to help us introspect, to help us inquire about ourselves, which is why, I go to therapy. I don't miss therapy unless there's no choice about it. I'm out of town. I just simply have no two ways, because even though I can help other people do this as a trained therapist, I can't do it for myself. So when people think, I can do some of it for myself. I can introspect. I can think about my self-talk. I can write, but I can't do for myself what someone outside of me can do. Because I lack the impartial perspective of self. I'm impacted by what's going on inside of me as I'm trying to think about what's going on inside of me. So thinking, writing, or the therapy process can help us understand ourselves so much better, and the change rides on the back of understanding. We're trying to polish the hood instead of looking underneath at the engine. I believe that we are capable of understanding ourselves so much better than we do. Now, the world kind of collaborates with the shame in us and the fear that says, oh, just look the other way. And it's really the opposite of what leads us to health, which is part of why you and I are talking about it today, a part of why it's so important.
Well, and it's also why I want to take a highlighter and make sure that as you were listening to Dr. Conti, you had 2, maybe 3 super important takeaways from what he just said. Number 1, that just thinking about this can sometimes lead to you spinning in circles. And so there's an enormous benefit to you getting those thoughts out of your mind and onto paper, or speak them out into the world. The second thing that you said is, if you can have access to therapy, that's a fantastic thing, because, just like the example that I gave earlier when I was saying, our daughter was telling herself, I'm never going to find anybody, and I'm not this, and why does everybody, and I'm not good looking, and I'm not that, and I'm not the other thing. That when you're outside and you're objective, you have this perspective that the person that's living with this little voice doesn't have. And so there's something beautiful about speaking it out of your mouth so that you can now analyze with somebody else. But you also said something, and you wrote about this in your book, and I think it's super important, that just talking about it with a friend or a loved one and having somebody that you feel safe with, that you can share your experiences with, that it normalizes it. It makes you feel that sense of relief, and that can be helpful to somebody if you can't afford to go to a therapist. And so don't do this on your own, because talking to a friend or a loved one about the little voice in your head and how you see the dots starting to connect can provide you the insight and self-awareness that you really deserve.
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there
Yes.
anything else that you would add to that?
Well, I think we can get perspectives from outside of us. So imagine in the example where you were citing your daughter saying, no one wants to talk to me, or I'm not good enough or attractive enough. And let's imagine if a person feels that way, we can very rapidly start making self-fulfilling prophecies without being aware of it. So someone who feels that way is often diffident, their head is down, they're behaving in ways that may make them much, much less approachable. Then no one does approach them, right? And then they find confirmatory evidence that they're not good enough, and then they're looking down more next time, they're more avoidant next time, and this can get people into places that can at times be hard to get out of or to understand, because we're often not aware of how what's going on inside of here affects how we present ourselves in the world around us. That person who keeps having a negative experience with a boss over and over and over again, may not realize that they're inadvertently fostering exactly that. They're behaving in certain ways that are diffident, or that are avoidant, and then there's a repetition. So we can look across life situations, but we're not necessarily the best at observing ourselves of, how am I in the world? And I mean, how many times have I heard a person say, oh, no one wants to talk to me, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not attractive enough, or this or that. And then when you get a little bit more information, oh, since that breakup 2 months ago, every time they go out, they're kind of like this.
Yeah.
And their friends see that, right? But maybe people haven't talked about it. And a lot of times that's the case, where people around someone haven't talked to someone about something that's very clearly evident. And if we start being more curious about ourselves, talking to trusted people around us, it's remarkable how much we can learn about ourselves. Someone who will tell me that they feel very ashamed of themselves, and they've done something terrible, but they have been assaulted. Right? So they're kind of like the example that you gave, which happened throughout life. And you would say, well, what might you say to another person? Or there's another person coming in who was sleeping when they were assaulted. Can you stay around and tell them just how awful they are? Right? And it's a way of getting out of ourselves, because we make ourselves special in ways that are not good for us. So he says, don't make yourself special in ways that are not good. If anyone else would be off the hook for something, or gosh, we would have sympathy and compassion. We'd want to bolster that person. Like, why am I the exception, right? So we can look at ourselves through a fair and equitable lens if we come at it that way. That's the basic premise behind it. But that's part of the premise of inquiry in therapy, and also what it is like if we're just talking to someone trusted around us. Is I don't want to go tell someone, here's my story of why I'm so bad, but like, here's a story of how I can really think that, and that can go over and over again in my head. If I'm curious about it, boy, that conversation is likely to go well, because I'll learn from me while I'm talking, right? And if I'm talking to you, boy, I'll probably learn from you too. And I'll open up also for you to talk to me, right? Maybe then you talk to me about yourself, and that's good for you. And, there are ways that we can, through trusted communication and communication in the service of understanding and helping, we can be so much help to one another in ways that we just often aren't. Often not because we don't want to be, but because the opportunities aren't there for it. Nobody raises something. It's just not talked about. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that.
When
Yes.
you start to identify that little voice and the weight that it's tied to, how do you train your mind to default to something else?
Well, so there's a lot of answers to that, potential answers, depending upon the person, their underlying mental health, what that thing is, how pervasive it may or may not be in their lives. Is it reflection? Is it writing? Is it a therapy process? I mean, there's a lot of answers to that, and often the answers also include behavioral change.
Yeah.
So if I think I'm a loser because I'm not healthy enough, some aspect of that is behavioral change, is realizing, I can get myself out of bed 20 minutes earlier and go for a walk around the block. Like, I can do that. And then getting myself to do that, which then bolsters me. So there's behavioral change, and there's what goes on inside. But I think an important thing, an extremely important thing to say about the question you asked, is that when something has been with us for a long time, it doesn't change overnight, because we are also creatures of habit. So I give this example a lot, that if you and I just chose a word and we decided, let's choose a word and say it 1,000 times, right? Then you'll be thinking about it this evening. I'll be thinking about it this evening too. If we say it 5,000 times, it'll be on our minds in 2 days, right? So we have to understand that these negative pathways, they will atrophy. They can and will atrophy over time, but they don't go away all at once. And because we live in a world that often wants rapid gratification, and a medical system that is like, no matter what's going on with you in many scenarios, okay, you get 10 sessions of, of a certain kind of therapy, and everyone's supposed to be better afterwards. So this drive towards rapid gratification, and these expectations that we're just supposed to be able to change things, I think also come from how the mental health systems that allegedly are treating us and often don't do a good job of it, approach us, create a sense of disappointment of, why am I still thinking that after I've already been through 3 weeks of therapy about it? Well, the answer might be because you've been thinking about it for 7 months or 7 years, right? Or in some cases, 7 decades. So we have to have a framing that's realistic, because it may be that a 20% change in the frequency of saying that negative thing to oneself over a couple months might be an amazing achievement. And that achievement is leading towards that thing going away. But we get so impatient and we don't have a framing of, what should this require of me? How long should this take? What are these neuronal mechanisms that are forces of habit that guide so much of what goes on inside of us that can be changed, but not rapidly? So I think, again, understanding is of such importance, and having rational expectations. So I very often will want people to understand, we can change this, right? But it's going to take us, I'm not sure, I might say, it's probably going to be in the 4 to 6 month range. Like, we can really get our arms around this, and I want, and hope that things can start improving a couple weeks down the road. But, it's a several month process. Like, let the person know that, because so often there's just a reflex that says, hey, somebody threw a medicine at you, right? And that medicine's supposed to make you better, right? Let alone if it's like a couple therapy sessions and that's supposed to make a person better. We need a rational framing for what's going on inside of us, and to plot out, how do we actually get to change?
Well, I think that's good news. Because
I
if
do think
you,
it's good
yeah,
news.
because if you have a level of patience that you bring to this process, you're
Right.
giving it room to work. And I will share personally that even just identifying the fact that this was a reflexive
Hmm.
habit of mine to tell myself someone's mad at me, even just identifying it, like, oh, there
Right.
it is again. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow, there it is again. Oh, how could the person in front of me in the line at the coffee shop be mad at me? I haven't said anything. I'm standing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just, oh, there
Right.
it is again. And so the process alone of starting to see this is rewarding in and of itself.
I think I want to highlight when we talk about having the courage to look at ourselves and how hard it is. You think about the example that you gave. You could have felt bad about feeling bad. You know, why am I feeling this way? I wake up and no one's here. I feel this way, or am I saying feeling bad things about them that my husband would feel that way about me? And like, think about how many ways you could just feel bad about that and have shut it down. Right? So it takes courage and curiosity to not do that. And I just think that part is so important to emphasize, and that we can start doing that. We can start feeling better, doing better, emboldening ourselves just by doing small, nice things for ourselves and for other people. And it may sound trite, but it is not. Right, to a good hand. Say if you're in that line at the coffee shop and somebody drops something, you know, to pick it up for them, or to give them a smile, right, or do something nicer for ourselves, because we often self-punish. And if I don't feel bad about myself, I'll just walk that distance in the rain instead of putting an umbrella up. Like, we do a lot of these things to ourselves where we could just in the moment just be nicer to ourselves, more considerate to ourselves and to others. And that starts empowering and emboldening us to do that, to see there's enough good in me that I can give somebody a smile, I can give somebody a helping hand, or I can even be a little nicer to myself. And it may sound small or trite, but I promise that it is not. And it's often that gets the ball rolling towards something maybe more difficult, like looking at something that I know is on my mind a lot, but I've been scared to look at. So I think we can start in simple ways, simple goodness to self and others.
That example of putting an umbrella up was so poignant, because I think of how many times I've had an umbrella and I've just been like, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I carry the umbrella. I walk a couple blocks. I pop my collar. I start a hunch down and I take the drops. And that moment where you stop and put up the umbrella,
Right.
it is important. And I keep thinking about this visual of the raindrops being like the negative beatdown.
Yeah.
And
like
the
that.
act of popping up the umbrella as a way to just have yourself not have to hear it.
Yeah. I really do love that, because, you know, sometimes we'll say, to hell with it, you know, like, but like the idea, I get the umbrella up, but to hell with it. No, that's actually to hell with me.
Yeah.
Right? So we want to stop and think, like, well, if I'm thinking to hell with it, what am I really thinking? To hell with me. I'm not worth getting the umbrella out, right? And it's awareness like that. No, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do that. I'm not going to say the hell with it, to hell with me. I'm going to make some protection, makes it just even make a little bit more pleasantness or anything positive for myself. And I love that way of then the umbrella is shielding us from, you know, the negativity, because we've had the wherewithal inside of ourselves to do something small but meaningful for ourselves. Yeah, I think that's a powerful way to move that example forward. I like that.
It's beautiful. What is your brain doing
when you're dreaming?
Yeah, in that REM stage.
You are, well, first of all, you're creating dreams. It's also important for the process of creativity and for changing your mind. It's actually an extremely plastic state. So it's paradoxical, because electrically it looks like wakefulness, but chemically it's very different. So two of the neurochemicals that are off during dream state are two neurochemicals that keep you attuned to things that are novel and that are coming in from the outside world. and help you learn from things in the outside world, and those are norepinephrine and serotonin. They are off during REM sleep, so you're attuned internally to internal thoughts and internal images, and so you can actually build your own schema from the things that you learned during the day that are now registered in your brain. It's not a time for new learning. It's not a time for listening to new podcasts and getting that information in. It's a time to assimilate the things that you've already learned into coherent patterns that make sense.
I want to see if I can give that back to you to make sure that you listening are tracking, because I just had a big whoa, aha kind of moment here. So you said that the first 4 hours of sleep are critical for creativity, and I've also, I think, read in your research that it's also critical for the making of memories.
Yeah, for the assimilation of memories.
What is the difference between making and assimilation of memories?
So making memories requires us to pay attention to things in the outside world and put them together. And assimilating means you've taken those things from the outside world and now you're putting them together into packets we call schema, which are related pieces of information. And it's good for creativity because these new pieces of information get assimilated into different schema in ways that we can't do when we're awake.
Okay, I think I'm actually getting this.
Okay.
You're basically saying that neuroplasticity isn't happening when we're learning. The neuroplasticity is happening when we're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
There's that saying in the exercise world that your abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym, because of food being medicine. And what you're basically saying is habits are made in your bedroom while you're sleeping, not while you're out in your life living, because that's when your brain locks in all the learning that you did today. That's so freaking cool. The chemicals, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the chemicals in your brain, which are serotonin and norepinephrine, or however you say it.
Norepinephrine, noradrenaline.
Noradrenaline, that's easier for me to say. Noradrenaline, they're not present, which means you're only tuned into the information that is in your brain and your body from your experience today.
Yeah.
And because those two chemicals aren't present during this sleep cycle, your brain is locking in these new patterns and habits and skills and memories. You're calling them, from an academic standpoint, like each one of these memories or this new skill or this new neurotransmitter that gets created is a schema.
Yeah, it goes into a schema. Schema are things like, what is Christmas? There's a whole host of things that are associated with Christmas, or, what does summer mean? And there's a whole host of things, and that's a schema into which a lot of things get built.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. So it's almost like our own internal search architecture.
Yeah.
I think about it like Legos, Summer Lego box has a whole lot of little Lego cubes in it of different colors, and you can create different things.
Yeah.
This is really cool. And so neuroplasticity and habit formation, one of the huge takeaways that you've already given us is that sleep is critical for that to happen. Like you have to have sleep in order to have that formation happening in your brain.
That's
and body.
right. Because during the day you can assemble you can collect these Lego pieces, but you don't assemble them into a coherent schema.
Wow.
So, I think if you think of sleep as laziness or a time when you're not doing anything, then it's harder to justify in our workaholic world that, of that time we spend asleep. But instead, if you know that your brain is doing all kinds of essential things that can't be done during wakefulness, it's another quote unquote work time, even though it's a pleasant work time and it feels quite different than waking work. Then you can justify, hey, I need this. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to be able to tackle my next day better. And so you can schedule it in just like you schedule everything else in to your life.
I'm sorry. I just think this is so cool. Your book has also dug into what I think is jaw-dropping science about a simple walk. So before we kind of dig into all of it, Can you talk a little bit about that 2018 study that tracked participants' activity levels and personality traits over 20 years and how walking had impacted people over time?
One is one that looked at inactivity over time. And this was a US study, a so-called panel study tracking changes in personality and correlating those with activity or inactivity. And the bottom line is very, very simple, that people who spend increasing periods of time being sedentary as they move along in life. It's not a question of getting older. This can be a midlife, they tend to show changes in their personality, which are, for want of a better phrase, tending them towards being more asocial, being less open to experience, and probably experiencing more by way of negative emotion compared to people who get up and get out and get moving. The other study that I'm thinking of is one that was conducted just a couple of years ago in older people, people in their late 60s and early 70s. And that study, again, a beautiful US study conducted in the Chicago area, showed very clearly that if you are inactive, there are negative changes in the brain compared to people who are active. And the changes that are positive in the brain from activity arise from getting up and moving and getting out and going for a good walk. So the intervention is a very simple intervention. It's to go for a walk 3 times a week for a couple of miles, along with a walking partner and a physiotherapist. And what you see in the group that are active is brain changes that are really remarkable. You get an increase in the volume of certain brain regions that are concerned with memory. And you also get changes in the effectiveness, for want of a better phrase, of the memory that's supported by those brain regions. Whereas the people who are sitting at home, not active, they're showing a greater decline than they need to do, or than if they had been active over that period of time. So the key point here to really drag out is that being active positively supports good things about your personality, but it also reaches across to cognitive function. It supports positive things about memory function, and it helps you resist the trajectory of decline that you would have if you just are sitting on your couch doing the Homer Simpson, eating a bag of potato chips and watching telly.
I think that most of us underestimate what's actually happening in our bodies and in our minds when we're walking. And so let's break it down. What happens in the brain when you go for a walk?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to think about here, and it really depends on the level of analysis that you want to start at. So let's make it kind of very simple. So I'm sitting here at home and I want to go to the shop. So the first thing that you have to do is form the intention that you're going to go and get up and do something. Yes. That could be because somebody's bleeped you or phoned you or whatever to say to come and meet them at the shop, or you realize you need to go and pick up a pint of milk or whatever it happens to be. So what does that do? Well, the first thing is you have to stand up, you have to get up, you have to engage in preparatory movement in order to walk. That's a challenge for your brain. Sitting or lying down in a chair or being recumbent in a chair is not a challenge. Standing up, maintaining balance, and then having directed coherent motion in the direction that you want to go is also a challenge to your brain. So the key point here is that movement, and the movement in this case we're talking about, of course, is walking, acts as a positive spur to the brain, and rhythms that would be quiescent in the brain are suddenly alive. They become very apparent. So in order to get to the shop, you have to orient your body in the correct direction. You have to create a cognitive map of the environment that you're in. These are all subtle, small challenges, but the brain benefits from these. And then let's say you are actually going to the shop and it happens to be up a hill, for the sake of this point. Well, then there are other challenges happening as well. So you have to calibrate your walking speed so that you're at a speed that's comfortable for you. That means you have to step up your heart rate a little. You have to increase your breathing a little. your musculature has to respond to all of those things. So you've got a whole load of top-down signals from the brain acting as a challenge to the body to get it moving. And then you get to the shop, you do what you got to do, and then you walk home again. You might have to carry something. So that's actually a good challenge for you as well. So, even at those kinds of simple levels, you can see changes across a whole range of things from, as I said, from the kind of top-down commands that are coming from the brain all the way down to your foot hitting the ground and you levering yourself off and moving off.
Well, I certainly don't think about any of those things when
Or should
I
you?
need to get. Well, but what is that? You said that the act of pushing yourself off the couch, standing up, uh, triggering your mind to activate from the top down the mechanical patterns that allow you to walk, the cognitive patterns of surveying where you are and how you're going to get to a certain place, that all these things benefit the brain. How do they benefit the brain?
They benefit the brain because probably the best way to think about this is that movement is medicine, is the lovely phrase that's going around at the moment. So think of an example. Let's imagine you own a bicycle and you get this lovely new bike from the shop and you put it in your garage and you leave it there for a year and you don't do anything with it. What condition is it going to be in? The chain is going to be all silted up. The tires have probably deflated. The brakes aren't going to be especially responsive. All of those kinds of things will have gone wrong with it. And the same is true for your body. Your body needs to work optimally, repeated challenge. Your brain needs this as well. This is why when for example, if you're walking for the sake of your heart, you need to step it up so that speaking is hard for you, so that there's a sufficient challenge being presented to you. Your body is obviously designed to do two things. One is to conserve energy, but the other is to source energy. And we always have this fight going on within us. Am I going to get up? If I'm going to get up, am I going to take the car? Or, those kinds of choices we make. And they make sense, when you think about the conditions that humans lived under for thousands of years. We didn't have the easy availability of calories that we have now. We didn't have chairs with backs. We sat on tree stumps. We sat down on our hunkers, but we didn't have all of these wonderful comforts that our big brains have allowed us to invent over the past 100 years and to spread around among us all. Even this, fantastic conversation we're able to have. When I said, you don't need to be thinking about these things, this is the joy and the wonder of the body that we have. You don't need to be thinking, well, I have to maintain a certain line of balance. I have to invoke my cognitive map. I have to put one foot in front of the other. All of these things are done at a level below consciousness, and you should only be thinking about them if something goes wrong. Like, for example, you slip because there's a patch of ice, or the shop is closed and you have to think about another shop you have to go to. And I kind of, one of the points that I make repeatedly in the book is that we've designed movement out of our environment. And again, this is perfectly understandable. We're trying to conserve energy. But if we want to get people moving again, what we really need to do is design the environment so that it's easy for people to walk. I give you a simple example. My local suburban town, which I live very close to, had quite narrow footpaths. It's a very old town. It's there since the 1100s or something, and the footpaths are all kind of 3 foot wide. And priority was given foolishly to traffic, even though it's an old medieval town. The pandemic came and people were eating outside. That meant the traffic had to lose its position of primacy. The restaurants were allowed to put tables outside. That meant the footpaths had to be expanded. And suddenly the default is people are walking rather than driving. And that's a really, really nice thing. But to give you a contrary example, in my office, in the building I work in, if you want to come and visit me in my office, you come in the door and I'm up on the 3rd floor. How do you get to me? If you want to walk to me, you have to walk through 4 fire doors to get to the stairs. But if you want to take the lift, or the elevator as you call it, it's just there. So my building has a walking designed out of it. And that building will be, I guess, there for 100 years. So people will be not using the stairs in that building for 100 years. And this is an issue that, generally we've created environments where the default is to conserve energy and not move. But we've got a food surplus, a caloric surplus. So actually what we should be doing is creating environments that make it easy for people to move around under their own steam.
One of my missions in wanting to talk to you is to have the person listening to us right now have an epiphany about the profound power and impact that incorporating a simple walk into your daily routine can have on you. And I know it wasn't until we started digging into your research that I honestly had no idea that a simple walk could have the chemical and structural and creative impact. And it made me wonder, why doesn't everybody take a walk every day if it's free and it does all this? Hey, it's Mel. I want you to stop thinking about what you want and actually do something about it. What can you do? Jump into my new free training called Make It Happen. This training gives you the tools. It's packed with science. It comes with a free workbook. It's exactly what you need right now. More than 500,000 people are taking it. You have the power to change your life. Together, let's make it happen. All you got to do is click on the link in the caption, melrobbins.com/makeithappen. It's free. I created it for you. Why wouldn't you take it? Don't miss out on the life you could be living. Let's make it happen together. You teach people about the higher and lower brain. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, I thought the brain was just a lump. It's just like there's a lump in my head, and I just lost the brain lottery. That was kind of my assessment of my own brain. It was just like, I don't know, I just didn't get a very good one, or I got one that like always wants more. So obviously there are, I'm not an expert on the brain. There are many, many parts of the brain, but I think just understanding at a very basic level, we have a lower brain that is concerned with the immediate moment. It does not care about tomorrow. It does not care about the future. It cares about right now. And that's a good thing, actually, right? That lower brain is really helpful for survival, but it cares about right now. It cares about finding pleasure, avoiding pain. It wants to do things efficiently. It wants to save energy. Now, thankfully, we also have a higher brain. We have that prefrontal cortex. We have that ability, that part of ourselves that can think about tomorrow and our goals and our dreams and our future, and it can weigh pros and cons, and it can get curious and ask questions. Like, we have both parts of the brain, and that's actually an amazing thing. If we start to understand, hey, how am I going to manage this lower brain? So, I also talk about it like the toddler. Like, how are you going to manage when the toddler is freaking out? The toddler, right? Like, like watch my own children. It's like they want what they want when they want it. And trying to have like an intellectual conversation with them about why they shouldn't really want it. And this is not how we behave. Like, you're not going to get anywhere. As opposed to, okay, I have this higher brain. I have this adult brain. What am I going to do in this situation to navigate the tantrum that is actually going to be useful? Giving in, probably not so useful, because then what does the toddler learn? It's like, oh, this is how I get my way. This is a good thing.
So the higher brain is the one that you're using to tolerate the urge.
Yeah.
And to ride the wave. And the lower brain is the one that is going, oh, sunset, desire boundary equals gin and
this is what we
tonic.
want.
Yeah, this is what I want.
You've taught me when we watch the sunset, I get a drink. This is what we do, right? I remembered. See? I reminded you. I saw a sunset and I was like, drink. Like, lower brain is doing its job.
Oh my God. That's so helpful.
Because it's like, I think we all really understand, like, we're not going to have like an intellectual conversation with the toddler.
No, you're basically going to go, I understand that you're upset, and that feeling or desire is value. But that feeling or desire is true.
Yep.
And that's not what we're doing right now.
That's not what we're doing. And I know this is hard, and I'm going to be here with you, and I'm going to stay by your side. You're not in trouble. You're not doing anything wrong. But I'm going to help you see yourself through to the other side. And you, and you know what? It still will probably be a little uncomfortable. But so much less uncomfortable than like, why are you throwing a tantrum? You're not supposed to be having a tantrum right now.
Is there any, I know you don't tell people what to do, but is there any prescribed method? Like when a client that you're working with says, okay, I want to try to tolerate the urges. I want to try to notice when the lower and the upper brain are in conflict and rely on the upper brain to get me through this moment where I'm going to go to a baseball game and I'm not going to order a beer. Is there anything that you tell people to do? Like for 5 days, don't have a drink, or, or do you talk about specific scenarios? Like how do you get somebody to really start practicing this? Because I can also see how this, if you've been in conflict for a long time, this could become one of those things where you think about it a lot, but you don't actually try it.
Right. So I think that the process always starts with, we got to learn something. We got to learn about how the brain works. We got to learn some of these tools. I have people take a 30-day break from drinking.
Okay.
And I believe it's very different than kind of like a dry January or a sober October, because what I'm always telling people is the 30 days, I want you to focus on using the tools. Yes, we are using the tools to say no, but I want you to focus on like, this is me going all in on trying out all these techniques, all the techniques to manage my urges, all the techniques to talk back to my excuses. I'm going to be using these tools, and I'm going to be discovering some work better than others, right? So I always have to be in this place of assessing and adjusting. Did that work? Did that not work? I think a lot of times what happens, dry January, there can be a lot of benefits, but the point is making it 30 days. And I'm like, listen, we're doing these 30 days it doesn't matter if you drink on day number 2. That's good data, right? That means something didn't work. Let's look at what didn't work. Let's examine that, and let's figure out what we need to do to prepare. Now, I will tell you, that's a huge mindset shift for people, because a lot of people, they say I'm all or nothing when it comes to drinking. I actually think they're all or nothing about commitment, right? It's kind of like I either was committed and I did it right and gold star, or I broke my commitment and now it's like, okay, why bother, right? I made a mistake, so now I get to have as much as I want. And it's kind of like learning how to change means developing a different relationship with commitment.
The tool that I'm going to give you is something that I use all the time. I call it a brain dump, okay? It's so simple. It costs you nothing. You can do it several times a day. Anybody can use this. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to take out a blank piece of paper. I don't care if it's lined or it's printer paper or it's the flip side of a bill that you just paid. And you're going to take that piece of paper and you are going to vomit everything on that paper that is in your brain. Absolutely everything, okay? And you can just dump it all out there. And if you want to get fancy pants with this, you can draw a line down the center of the paper and you can write important stuff on the left and shit I can do later on the right, okay? But you don't even need to do that. I'm just adding that in there because I know a lot of our listeners are very, very, very I like to keep things organized, Mel. No problem. You can add a little pizzazz to your brain dump. I'm so scatterbrained with the ADHD that I just need a blank piece of paper and I just dump it all down there. And so let me think about today what would be on my list. Packing for Boston, calling my daughter to remind her that it's dinner's at 7:30. I got to check in for the plane ticket. I got to make sure that I haven't even looked at the weather yet, so I don't even know what to pack for Boston. I don't know what it's going to be like in New York when we land there Saturday to support another friend who's doing this concert. I didn't even pick up my ADHD prescription yet, and I need to get that on the way out of town. And so you can see that just like you, I suffer from not only legitimate overwhelm right now, but I also have a case of lifestyle overwhelm. that I overwhelm myself because I manage all this crap on my head. So you feel a sense of lifestyle overwhelm, brain dump everybody. Get it out of your head and get it down on a piece of paper. Because when you can get it down on a piece of paper, you can be more strategic about creating a system to get it done. And it feels so good to do this. When you're managing all this stuff in your head, this is why going for a walk with a friend is so therapeutic. Not only are you outside, but as you're walking and talking, you know what you're doing? You're brain dumping. You're getting all that stuff that you've been ruminating about out into the air. And when you get it out on a piece of paper by doing a brain dump, like just pour it all out there, that's what you need to do. I was about to tell you 15 other things that just came to mind, because what starts happening when you do a brain dump is it's sort of like pulling a thread on a sweater. That sucker just keeps on going. So don't be surprised if there are some days that you fill 3 pages. So now, what do you do now that you've dumped it all out on a piece of paper? You're going to take a highlighter and you're going to highlight the 3 things that you must do today. These are your priority. This is what's important. So what are the 3 things I need to do today? I need to pick up my prescription. I need to pack for Boston. And I need to work on this eulogy. Those are the only 3 things that matter. And you want to know something fascinating about life? Is that if you just can dump everything out and you can highlight the 3 things that really matter, that you get to them today, if there's an emergency or if something else is a true priority, have you ever noticed it gets your attention anyway? If one of your kids is sick or a friend needs you, they call. If you have to fill up the tank of gas, you'll realize when you get in the car and it's on empty, like mine often is because my son borrows the car and never fills the car back up. If you realize you've run out of milk, you'll realize it when you open up the fridge and you'll deal with it. But it's not really that important. It's not life or death. It's not a big thing. You need to pick the 3 things that are the actual priority. So, lifestyle overwhelm. Brain dump, highlight the 3 things that actually matter, and that's how you beat that lie that everything's important. Because when everything's important, nothing is. And you get to say what's important. So pick those things. All right. Our next question is from Cindy. And Cindy's overwhelm comes from the fact that she says yes to everything. I can't wait for you to hear the lie she's telling herself, because I think you're going to relate to this one too.
Hi Mel, this is Cindy. Do you have a strategy for not overcommitting for daily tasks? It sounds so ridiculous when I type it out, but it really is destructive and sparks feelings of failure when I cannot accomplish all I believe I should be able to handle in a single day. Thanks so much.
Oh, Cindy, I love you. Cindy, I relate to you too. You have a case of lifestyle overwhelm. You have perfectionism, and you also put a ton of pressure on yourself. And there's this huge lie that we overachievers tell ourselves. You want to hear it? There's so much more I should be doing. Everybody's doing more than me. I should be doing more. I need to do more. Here's the truth. You need to do what needs to get done. And the rest does not matter. And so here is the rule that we're going to build upon. Imagine that you do the brain dump. Your problem is you highlight everything that you just dumped on a piece of paper. And so I'm going to give you this tool. It's called the rule of 3. There are only 3 things that actually matter. And I often say to myself when I start getting a case of lifestyle overwhelm, when I'm trying to add things to the to-do list, when I'm putting pressure on myself to do more, when I feel weird that I'm like kind of done with what needed to get done and now I don't know what to do with myself, so I feel like I should do more. Mel, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. This happened to me last night. So last night, I was scurrying around with a case of lifestyle overwhelm because I'm trying to get through my to-do list, and I'm realizing, oh my God, I don't have any clean underwear for this frickin' trip. So I've got to do laundry before I have to pack, which of course only makes me feel more overwhelmed. So I grab the basket of laundry. I tromp up the stairs. And as I'm climbing up the stairs to the 2nd floor of our house here in Southern Vermont, I look up and all of the walls in the upstairs hallway are blank. They have a brand new coat of paint on them, but there ain't nothing hanging on these walls. And I immediately feel this wave of overwhelm come over me because I don't have any pictures of our family in our new house. And I've always envisioned that we will do a family picture wall on these 3 walls. And I start to think, oh my God, wait, are we going to do pictures that are black and white with black frames? Or should we do those sort of blow up things that wrap the canvas around the things that are sort of like an inch thing and they're colorful? And do I do them different sizes? And I start to feel completely overwhelmed. And then I start to beat myself up for the fact that I haven't done this, that I don't have any pictures identified, that I also let my Shutterfly account go because they just moved to a whole thing where now you have to pay in order to have your pictures stored there. And I have all my old pictures on Shutterfly. And now I'm beating myself up about that. And so now here I am with a load of laundry. I've put the basket down. I didn't even realize I did. And I'm looking at all 3 walls having a panic attack about these freaking pictures and this project that doesn't fucking matter. Pick 3 things. 3 things, Mel. The rule of 3. The only thing that matters is getting this damn laundry done so that you have underwear to wear while you are delivering a eulogy. And you need to, I don't remember what the 3rd thing was yesterday, but I think I got it done. It doesn't fucking matter, Mel. So don't get overwhelmed about what the 3rd thing was yesterday. You know what the 3 things are today. You got to work on the eulogy. You got to pack for Boston. And what was the 3rd thing? Medicine, right? Oh, yeah, I got to pick up my medicine. Thank you, Amy. See, I don't even know. Lifestyle overwhelm. I have legitimate overwhelm, which means I know that the dial's cranked up right now. And so I also know I need to give myself a little bit of a break, that I am going to be in this state of feeling amped up until I get through this eulogy. That's just the legitimate overwhelm that I'm feeling. But I don't need to add on top of that a dose of lifestyle overwhelm by obsessing over a picture wall that I have not done anything about in 6 months of living here. 6 months. Okay. So that's it. That's it. Okay. And the same is true for you. Lower the pressure. Lower the pressure. And for those of us that have trouble sitting still or relaxing, you got to be really careful about lifestyle overwhelm because it will rob you of your ability to be present. It will rob you of just being able to sit down and read a book or go out into your garden and weed or pick up a phone and make a date to go meet a friend for coffee. And that's how this creeps into your whole life. This lie that you say that you got to be doing more. No, you don't. The whole point of this is to enjoy your life. And catching yourself when you get a case of lifestyle overwhelm and reminding yourself of the rule of 3, that will help you lower the pressure, focus on what matters, and create more time to just chill and enjoy your life. Okay? So Leela is up next, and I love this because she listened to the episode we recently did that you guys loved. Holy cow, it was one of the most shared episodes on Spotify. I'm so glad you got a lot out of it. And a lot of you responded to the fact that I connected your habit of procrastinating to the fight or flight response that we have when we get stressed out. You know how when you get stressed, you have that fight, flight, or freeze. Procrastination is a form of freezing. And so that episode is Procrastination, the Only Way to Stop Procrastination, based on research. Again, we will link to it in the show notes. And Leela had a follow-up question on that, and here it is.
Mel, this is a huge thank you. I'm an artist, and also I procrastinate, and I get stressed, freeze, and then end up doing nothing. I heard what you said on the procrastination episode, and I think wearing the stress backpack is super heavy right now, and I plan to shed it today. I need to manage my time better. So now I need to figure out how to get back to my easel and start painting. I can't wait for your next episode. Thanks so much, Leela.
Hey, it's Mel, and I just want to talk to you since you're watching this on YouTube. First of all, thank you for being a fan of the Mel Robbins podcast. You have made us one of the top ranking podcasts in the entire world. Please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel because it's your support that allows our team to bring this to you at zero cost. And so that's really important. And I don't want you watching this on YouTube while you're driving a car. Will you take me with you by subscribing to the Mel Robbins podcast on your favorite podcast platform? Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher. You can listen on Audible. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, please subscribe to the Mel Robbins Show. It really matters for a growing show like ours, and it allows us to continue to bring you all this great stuff at zero cost. Okay, let's go back to the show. Leela, I'm so happy you're on our walk today with me and that you shared that, because procrastination is a form of lifestyle overwhelm. And in case you haven't listened to that episode yet, as you're taking this walk with us, when Leela said stress backpack, she's using a term that I used in that episode to basically say all those things that are going on in your life, the things that are causing you stress, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you literally carry it around with you as if all that stress is in a backpack. Joni, my friend who was caring for her mom, backpack of stress. Everybody that you've heard on our walk today, the demands of their life, the pressure that they're putting on themselves, all of that is a stress backpack. And you have one too. And what happens when you feel really stressed out is you can start to freeze. And then what happens when you freeze and you push things off and you procrastinate? You get stuck in lifestyle overwhelm. You're in this vicious cycle of pushing things off and then beating yourself up and then feeling overwhelmed because you're pushing things off that you really want to get to. And so what is the tool here? Because there's a huge lie that you tell yourself when you procrastinate, okay? And I can hear it. And the lie that we tell ourselves is, I can handle this all in my head. That if I think about it, I'm working on it. Not true. Not true. It's one of the reasons why I use that tool of a brain dump all the time, to get it out of my head, to not manage it in my head. Because if it spins in my head, it turns into rumination and nothing gets done. Just like those blank walls, those pictures are not getting done by me spinning thoughts about it. And so the real thing I want you to understand is that if it truly matters, you have to schedule it. Things that matter end up in your calendar. And so one tool that I want you to use, Leela, is ask yourself this. This is a journaling prompt that you can use, everybody, that I just love. How can I make this easy? How can I make this easy? What's the simplest way that you can make it easier to paint? And for me, I'm going to share with you, I have to do the things that are important first thing in the morning. It's not that I'm not an evening person. It's that by the end of the day, I am so wiped out and just gassed. I don't have the stamina or the willpower or the energy to force myself to do things that require energy. David Goggins, who I just love, he has his alter ego, Goggins. Goggins pushes himself and has the mental discipline. And I freaking love that. But I don't want to set up my life so that every night I've saved the thing that really brings me joy. I have to summon up what researchers call, and we've talked about this in other episodes, it's called activation energy. Csikszentmihalyi, who's a famous psychologist from the University of Chicago, studied motivation and flow states extensively and realized that this resistance that we feel to doing things that we've put off, that requires activation energy and getting out of bed, pushing yourself to paint. For me, it's exercise. And if I put off exercise till the evening, it's not happening. It takes me 100 times more energy to drag my ass to that Peloton treadmill at night than it does to drag my ass to that Peloton treadmill in the morning. And so ask yourself, how can I make this easy? Maybe you need to do it at night. Maybe that is easier for you. Maybe you need to do it in the morning. Maybe it's the weekend. Or maybe you need to, if you can afford it, you need the structure of a painting class. one of the ways that I jump-started exercising, and I realize not everybody can afford this, but one of the ways I jump-started exercising was to start taking classes again, because I would pay for it and then I was motivated to go. And I knew once I got there, I could outsource the motivation to the instructor that would be yelling at me. Maybe you need a friend to do this with you, or you need somebody that's going to be your accountability partner and be really annoying on Saturday morning and text you and be like, hey, did you paint yet? I'm not meeting you for a walk until you did. And you can trade that kind of thing. Like, I think a lot of you know, for example, that I do a lot of the ice baths, where you climb into a really cold barrel of water, or you jump into an icy pond or a river up here in Vermont, or you take a cold shower. Do you know how I make it easy? I do it with Chris, my husband. Chris is like living with a monk. The dude is so stoic. He just kind of climbs right in there. No big deal. He shames me into doing it. That's how I make it easier. He goes in first. Now I'm like, oh God, now I got to do it. But if I have to do it myself, it's hard. And so that's what I want you to understand. Procrastination creates overwhelm. And chronic procrastination creates a vicious cycle that becomes lifestyle overwhelm. And so understand that. And that's huge that you understand that. And then the second thing I want you to do is remember, get it out of your head. Don't manage it there. It's got to get scheduled in real time. And then ask yourself, how can I make this easy? Because you can. And there's no reason why the things that you need to do have to feel so hard. And the reason why they feel so hard, everybody, is because we're not taking the time to go, okay, first of all, am I in a lifestyle overwhelm situation where I need to be kinder to myself and I need to have more compassion for myself and I need to keep reminding myself that this is a marathon and I need a little bit of stamina and I'm not going to be able to get to everything. I remember when I was doing the talk show, I had this experience where most of my team came from Oprah Winfrey's talk show and from her organization. And so I was surrounded by all these people that were super, super experienced. And my executive producer arranged for me to talk to a really, really famous talk show host whose show is no longer on the air. And this guy spent like an hour talking to me, and I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Mel, being a daytime talk show host, doing 175 shows in 6 months, this is a marathon. He said the most important thing that you could do is protect your stamina and be kind and patient with yourself. And you're not going to be able to live your normal life. You're not going to be able to go out to dinner with friends because if you tape 3 shows in a row at CBS Broadcast Center 4 days a week, you are not going to have energy. And by the way, you can't afford to get sick because the show must go on. And so right now, tell your family and your friends that you love them, but you are about to go into a bunker right now and you are about to focus on this. And then when you come up for air, you will be able to focus on having fun again and being with everyone else. And I think there are times in your life like that. Maybe you're studying for a dissertation. Maybe you are in the middle of applying to medical school. Maybe you're going through a divorce or you've lost somebody that you love and you're grieving. That is a moment of legitimate overwhelm. And the best thing that you could do is identify it, call it out for what it is, and be kinder to yourself and remind yourself that if you are, you'll have the stamina to move through this. And you will move through this. And there will be a time in your life where you will not feel this way. But for now, it's about putting yourself first. And for those of us that are also struggling with lifestyle overwhelm, it's okay. You now know. And now you have free, proven, research-backed tools that you can use. You got your brain dump. You got your rule of 3. Remember, it doesn't fucking matter. You can do the photos later. Nobody cares but you. And make it easier. Make it easier. That's it. And this stuff is so powerful. Like, it works so quickly. You don't realize how quickly you could break out of overwhelm because, like me, you've probably been stuck in this vicious cycle for so long that it's just the air you breathe. But there is something so much better that's available to you. You can create a better life. And that's why I wanted you to hear from a listener named Michelle last. And pay attention to the joy and the lightness in her voice. I wanted to invite Michelle on this walk with us because I want you to know that this is available to you when you finally take back control and you stop letting overwhelm run your life.
Holy shit, Mel. I just listened to your podcast on procrastination and it changed everything. You're the first person I've heard talk about money anxiety, oh my God, in a way that resonated with me. And you know what? I paid a credit card bill today that was 6 months late. I was in freeze mode, and when you said that on the podcast, I burst out crying. I mean, it was like a gut punch, and you thawed me. I paid that damn bill this morning, and all of a sudden I realized I have more time on my hands. Like, I was sitting there wondering what I was supposed to do. I had energetic time because I'd been thinking about this bill for 6 months. I've been torturing myself and holding myself back from my greatness. It's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I mean, what if it doesn't have to be hard? What if I can do the damn thing? Thank you so much, Mel. I'm really forever grateful.
Michelle, I'm forever grateful. And I'm really proud of you. And the thing I want to really highlight, because I can hear the energetic freedom. I can hear how light you are. And what I want to point out is, until you do the damn thing, you don't realize how much thinking about something and avoiding it and feeling overwhelmed by it, how much it's robbing you of energy. I relate to that because I feel that way about that damn picture wall. And I've gone through periods of my life where I didn't pay my bills because I couldn't pay my bills, but I thought about my bills all the damn time. Overwhelm is torture. Feeling like you're stuck in a vicious cycle where you got to do more, or you got to move faster, or you got to put this, it's just pressure and it's keeping you stuck there. And so now you know the truth. You can focus. You can prioritize. You can use the rule of 3 and just focus on doing the important things. Not everything is important. And when you stop acting as if it is, you will able to get done what needs to get done. See, overwhelm goes away the minute you start to take control. And that usually happens, honestly, with a simple pen and a blank piece of paper. That's it. Do the brain dump. Pick 3 things. Tell yourself, that doesn't fucking matter today. Remind yourself that anything that is an emergency bubbles its way to the top. And always ask yourself, how can I make this easier? How can I take the pressure off? How can I do the damn thing? And just pick one of those 3 and get started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pay that bill. Make that call. Write that next paragraph. Roll out that yoga mat. Pick up that guitar. Or for me, write that eulogy. And then on the plane ride home, log into Shutterfly and see if you can find all of those photos that used to be stored there. Do what you've been avoiding. Follow the rule of 3 and give yourself a fucking break if you're feeling legitimate overwhelm, because it will be over. But you have a choice over whether or not it's your lifestyle anymore. And for crying out loud, stop telling yourself those 4 lies. No, you can't handle it in your head. No, rushing won't make you fit it all in. And no, everything's not of equal importance. And no, you don't need to do more. In fact, you need to do a lot less. You just need to do the things that really matter to you. And when you do that, you, my friend, are going to get your life and all of that energetic time back. And I so want that for you. Whew. I feel better. I hope you feel better. I wish you were here so I could give you a hug. You know, after a great walk with a friend, you give each other a hug. And you're like, okay, when are we doing this again? We're doing this? Yeah, you know when we're doing this again? We're doing this on Thursday. And between now and then, I want to make sure I tell you, I love you. I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to really focus on what matters to you and go create a better life for yourself. Today, we're talking ADHD in women in particular. And in just a second, we're going to get to the 6 surprising signs of adult ADHD. But first, I really want to dig into what's happening in an ADHD brain. And this comes from research from Dr. Ned Hollowell. It comes from Dr. Amen. I know that Huberman Lab just did a bunch of podcast episodes on this, but this is how everybody talks about it. So the good thing about ADHD is it seems like the research that's been going on for decades is very conclusive about the prefrontal cortex and how ADHD impacts it. So let's talk about attention, okay? Because ADHD is not the inability to focus. ADHD is the inability to direct your attention in appropriate ways, in appropriate settings. That's what it means. That's why you'll often see kids with ADHD that can play video games for hours. That was Oakley. Like I could literally be banging pots and pans behind this kid. He wouldn't even know it. He was so focused. But he had an inability to direct that attention in appropriate ways in other cases. And let me just use the example that I just gave you. It's not healthy that he was so focused on video games that he couldn't hear pots and pans. That's not an appropriate use of attention either. And so let's unpack what attention is. So attention is a really important skill, right? You've got to be able to pay attention if you want to be successful at work, if you want to learn new things. You need to be able to direct your attention and in relationships. I mean, just think about it. There are times where somebody's talking and your stomach hurts, or you want to get a bite to eat, or you really don't give a shit and you want to yawn, or you want to interrupt them. Your ability to pay attention and suppress the urge to interrupt them or to yawn or to excuse yourself, that is the skill of attention. And it's critical for relationships. Otherwise, you're going to look like a rude asshole. So attention requires your prefrontal cortex to be able to switch between 2 neural networks in your brain. One of the neural networks is the part of your brain that is aware and paying attention to everything around you, okay? All the noise around you and all of your thoughts and your feelings in your body, okay? So one neural network that your prefrontal cortex needs to control is the ability to shh all the noise around you and all the noise within you. And I'm going to bring in an example that is used throughout the research with ADHD, and it's the example of an orchestra conductor. So your prefrontal cortex is an orchestra conductor. And I want to just bring in the sound of an orchestra warming up. You hear all the different sounds and the, like of people, of an orchestra getting ready and unpacking and warming up. That's you in the world. And one thing that your prefrontal cortex does when it comes to attention is it lifts up the little sticks and it points at the horns who are making too much noise and goes, shh. This is called a top-down function. It is able to tap into a neural network to suppress, shh, hey horns, shut the hell up, shh, 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 and silence the noise outside of you and silence the noise within you, your grumbling stomach, your thoughts about what you're doing tonight, so that the prefrontal cortex can then tap into the second neural network, which is the ability to raise up and focus on something specific. Hey, strings, it's time for you. Let's magnify and amplify you, because now the horns, shh, are quiet. We can now amplify the string section and hear it. And so that's the network that allows you, if you crack open a book, you focus on the book itself, but you also focus on the words in your mind and what you're learning and processing as you're reading it. So your prefrontal cortex, when it comes to attention, has to do those 2 things. The shh of the distractions outside you and the grumbling stomach in you, so that it can turn toward what you want to focus on and direct your attention appropriately. If you can't switch between those 2 things of the shh and the focus, you can't pay attention. And Anybody with ADHD, they're missing the conductor in the brain. You're not able to shh things. You're not able to spotlight on something else in most settings. You have an orchestra that's warming up all the time around you. And that's what the experts mean when they say that you have a neurobiological disorder that affects the brain structurally and chemically, as well as ways in which various parts of the brain communicate with one another. That's what they're talking about. The prefrontal cortex and the inability to switch between suppression of noise and amplification of focus. That's what it is. I can give you an example because I'm realizing my prefrontal cortex could not fucking do this. I went to Dartmouth College, and they have this incredible library, Baker Library, and I would always go to the stacks in the library to study. And I would carry my stack of books, and I would carry my notebooks and my pens and my highlighters, and I would commit to being there all day. Okay, I'm gonna study. I would sit down, and as soon as I sit down and crack open a book, you want to know what happened? The orchestra started warming up, and everyone started chit-chatting. I literally would be like, oh my God, I think I'm hungry. I got to go to the bathroom. Do I feel like studying? I'm not quite sure. And then I'd hear somebody walking and be like, who's that? Oh, is that Emily? Hey, Emily. I was incapable of that part of attention that your prefrontal cortex needs you to do. Shh. I was incapable of suppressing the sensation in my body, suppressing the monologue in my fucking mind, and tuning out and suppressing the noises around me. I would sit there for 8 hours and distract myself because this core function of my prefrontal cortex didn't work. Couldn't do it. So of course I had trouble paying attention because I couldn't suppress my internal and external noise in order to do the second part, where the conductor, the prefrontal cortex, turns to the strings after it's gone shh to the horns and amplifies and ramps up the strings. Let's hear the first stanza. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then they go, right? And that is your prefrontal cortex ramping up and amplifying either your focus in your head, because if I've got the book cracked open, I can't be paying attention to what my voice is saying. I've got to turn on the part of the brain that can now focus on the words on the page, right? I've got to be able to focus on things in the environment, the book in front of me, the words that are being processed as I'm reading. So attention is controlled by the prefrontal cortex, being able to shush and quiet and suppress one network that is tuned in to all of the outside and internal noise, and to amplify another network in your brain that goes into a focus state. My brain did not work that way. It was missing the conductor. And people with ADHD are missing a conductor that's working properly. And when you start to understand that, oh my God, there's this conductor in my brain, and this is the way they talk about it in research, you know, what you realize is this, because it goes a little bit further. Your brain takes a ton of fuel. When you look at the research, if you and I were to simply sit still all day and do nothing, I mean nothing, not even read a book, just sort of lay on the couch, do next to nothing, simply being awake and alive, you consume 25% of your caloric intake. When you start trying to focus, so again, attention is twofold. It takes fuel mentally to suppress the internal fidgeting, the fact that you're hungry, maybe you have to pee, your voice going, oh God, I'm going to screw over this test. Why can't I focus? What's wrong? Oh, is that Emily over there? It takes a lot of mental fuel to quiet that network in your mind. It takes more mental fuel for your prefrontal cortex to then go, hey, strings, we're going to pay attention to you, and to activate a different network that helps you focus on what's happening in your mind and focus on something in your physical environment. This is why after you take a test, you're exhausted, because you've drained the energy tank. And so what also happens for everybody with ADHD is the orchestra's playing. You're burning through fuel because both networks are going. your attempt to try to focus on something, and your attempt to like shut down the shit that you can't shut down. And so you're not only spinning your wheels by not actually being able to get done what everybody else can get done, you're also draining the energy tank. What ultimately happens is that you, if you're a woman, turn this against yourself. Guys are like, fuck this homework, and they get physical and they go do something else. Women aim it at themselves. And this is where it gets important, because this is about both being able to quiet certain neural circuits and enhance others. And what they've found, this is from Dr. Amen, who's been on this podcast, one of the world's leading experts in the brain. He's done over 60,000 scans of brains. When he has scanned people's brain, he has scanned my brain. And when you look at anybody's brain scan who has a ADHD brain, what they find is there are what appear to be holes in the prefrontal cortex. It's very, very common. And it's a sign that there's not sufficient blood flow to the conductor. The conductor can't work properly because it's not getting the blood flow that it needs. And he calls this a sleepy brain. That your brain is not getting the blood flow, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, or whatever the hell it's called, because we all know I can't say it. And that's why so many people with ADHD, because we're not able to have all of the neurotransmitters and the neurocircuits working properly. It's why so many of us chase dopamine dumps like shopping or alcohol or any other addictive kind of behavior. And it's also why it matters that women have a symptom of being hyper critical. Because think about the two networks that the conductor in your brain has to be able to switch on and off. Yes, you've got to be able to switch the ability to pay attention to the book and to the words as you're in your mind as you're processing what you're reading. But if you can't turn off what researchers call the default mode network, if you can't shush the fucking horns as they're like, you're never going to amount to anything. Why are you always behind? If you can't shh that, you live with a default mode, a voice in your head that is always active, that's always going, and that's always negative. And that's why so many of us develop such poor self-esteem. It's why the outcomes are horrendous for girls that don't get diagnosed that have ADHD, because you internalize all this shit.
What can we do to improve our memory, Dr. Amen?
Well, improve your brain. It's like the most important thing. It's 50%. I mean, think about this, Mel. 50% of people 85 and older will be diagnosed with dementia. Those are odds I am not okay with. And if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And I know we don't have time to go in it, but the mnemonic I have is bright mind. So for example, maybe the most important thing, B, is for blood flow. Whatever you can do to increase blood flow to your brain, you're going to be happier, your memory is going to be better, and you're going to be more sexual. Because whatever is good for your brain, good for your heart, is good for your genitals.
So is that the brisk walking?
So you want to avoid things that steal blood flow, caffeine, nicotine, being sedentary, having any form of heart disease. And then you want to do things that enhance blood flow. So walking, raw cacao, beets, the supplement ginkgo. These things all increase blood flow. Cinnamon, oregano.
Wow. Okay. I want to hear the R though. Bright mind. I know that there's 11, but give me 2 or 3 of them.
The R is retirement and aging. When you stop learning, your brain starts dying. So constantly engage in new learning. The I is inflammation. But the one maybe to talk about more is the T. It's toxins. And we live in a toxic society, right? Here I am in Florida. I just talked about all the fish off the coast in Florida. On average, they have 7 pharmaceuticals in their tissues. But just the products you put on your body, I have all of my patients download the app Think Dirty. It allows you to scan all of your personal products, and it'll tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 how quickly they're killing you.
Oh my God.
We saw this year that the FDA took off a number of sunscreens off the market because they were associated with cancer. How horrifying is that, right? You're thinking you're protecting yourself from cancer. The toxic products are giving you cancer. So Think Dirty, but also we have to stop thinking of alcohol as a health food. It's not, it's toxic to your brain. Or marijuana is innocuous. It's not, it damages your brain. And, you know, it's these little lies in our society that is really promoting the disease we are just flooded with.
So you've been a psychiatrist for 40 years. What are 5 things you'd never do because it's bad for your mental health and your brain health?
Well, I never believe every stupid thing I think. And I think that's really important to know, you know, I'm going to get these crazy, stupid, awful thoughts, and I know how to manage and dismiss them. I would never say everything I think. Some people come to me and say, oh, Dr. Amen, I'm brutally honest. And I'm like, well, that's usually not helpful. Relationships require not. I would never purposefully stay up late and screw up my sleep. I would never eat everything I want. And I would never take medicine just based on symptom clusters. Like, you know, I'm depressed, so take an antidepressant. So I think that's all insane. I always want to look at the brain and then target whatever treatment I need to how somebody's brain's functioning.
Yeah, the one thing I forgot to ask you, because, you know, right now, as you and I are talking, we've just turned the clocks back. But this time of year, when it gets darker earlier and it's colder, I notice like my mood drops and I feel like sad. What do you do, whether it's because of the time of year or because of chronic stress? You feel this sort of languishing or heaviness set in. What are 3 things that you would recommend that somebody do to boost their mood?
So morning bright light, I think that can be really helpful. So, you know, a bright light therapy lamp for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, exercise, don't overdo the caffeine. And it's really important, we haven't talked about this yet, turn off blue light when the sun goes down. So
what is blue light?
Constantly flooded with blue light. And in the morning, it's fine, but after dark, it's not, because it decreases the production of melatonin. So you get it from your laptop, or you get it from your phone, or you get it from whatever gadgets you might be looking at. And so after dark, either put blue light blockers on your gadgets or just turn them off and go read a book.
Okay, great. And, you know, I also didn't ask you this. How do you know if your dopamine levels are low?
If you're tired, if you're unmotivated, if you can't concentrate, and you find yourself more impulsive than is good for you.
And finally, let's bottom line, because you are the master at elite brain training. If you could leave everyone with just one thing that you would like them to start doing today to create better brain health, what would it be?
It's that mother tiny habit. It's whenever you come to a decision point in your day, just ask yourself, and what I'm doing good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love, I mean, I'm serious about this, love of yourself, love of your family, love of the reason you're on earth, you're going to start making good decisions for your brain, and then everything in your life will be better.
You know, one of the reasons why I love you is you have been an expert on the brain and a psychiatrist for 40 years, and you do not focus on what's wrong with us. You literally teach us how to bring out like more awesomeness through brain health. You call it elite brain training. What is that?
Well, a long time ago, I realized I hated the term mental illness. It shames people, it's stigmatizing, and it's wrong. There are brain health issues. And if I can teach you to get your brain healthy, well, your mind is better. People often don't understand that. Your brain, physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And so if you want to be elite, you're already elite. But the people I work with, everybody wants to be better. Nobody wants to be told they're mental. And so the mission I have on the planet is to end the whole concept of mental illness and create this revolution in brain health, which is why I'm so grateful to hang out with you today.
Oh, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but I just was struck by the fact that you distinguished between the brain and the mind. What's the difference between your brain and your mind?
Well, your brain, the physical functioning of your brain, creates your mind. And people get this mixed up all the time, but you just have to think of someone who has Alzheimer's disease. And if you saw the scans of people with Alzheimer's disease, you see that they're wildly damaged. And then that person is no longer fully that person because their brain has been damaged. Or just take COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People who get COVID in the next 4 months have a 25% chance of having a new onset psychiatric illness because COVID causes inflammation in the brain. And then I was on the Kardashian show recently, and Kendall came to see me, and she's like, after I got COVID, I'm so anxious. But if you look at the physical functioning of her brain, her emotional centers are on fire. And so people really need to know, if you want a healthy mind, the first thing to have is a healthy brain.
And when you say a healthy brain, so that makes sense to me, Dr. N, first of all, especially the Alzheimer's example. It makes sense to me that when the physical structure and functioning of your brain is impacted, of course it has an impact on the state of your mind. And so are you saying that absolutely anybody can improve the physical health of their brain, and that will have an impact on your happiness, your performance, and your mental health?
Everything. And it happens quickly. So for example, if you get better sleep tonight, your mind can be better tomorrow. If you get drunk tonight, your mind's going to be worse tomorrow. And because those both have a direct impact on the physical functioning of your brain.
Wow. Like, it's interesting because you're right. There is so much information and so many conversations out there about mental health, but you have this revolutionary approach of teaching all of us how to take better care of our brain and how to improve our brain itself and how that has a direct impact. So I want to start at the very beginning because, you've been doing this for 40 years. You are, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on the brain. And can you give us just a 101 on the brain and what you want anybody and everybody to know about the brain. And I want you to speak directly, Dr. Amen, to somebody who may be listening who's never thought about this topic before.
So your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. It's the organ of intelligence, character, and every single decision you make. And when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled for whatever reason, you're sadder, sicker, poorer, because your decisions aren't as good. And the very first step in getting a healthy brain is developing a concept I call brain envy. I always say Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I haven't seen it once in 40 years. It's brain envy is what you want. You want to love the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. You know, today I'm in Miami, but I usually live in Newport Beach, where we have more plastic surgeons than almost anywhere in the world, because people care more about their faces, their breasts, their bellies, and their butts than they do their brain. And that's insane, because it's your brain that makes you attractive. It's your brain that makes you happy. It's your brain that keeps you purposeful, or it's your brain that is the organ of rage. And so getting your brain right is critical. And it's these 3 steps. Brain envy, got to care, avoid anything that hurts it, know the list. And quite frankly, most second graders would get a 90% if you gave them 100 things that hurt their brain. And then the third thing is regularly do things that help it. And I worked with BJ Fogg for 6 months. He runs a persuasive tech lab at Stanford on how people change. And we develop tiny habits. You know, what's the smallest thing you can do today that will make the biggest difference? And the mother tiny habit is, whenever you go to do something today, ask yourself, takes 3 seconds. Ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love of yourself, love of your family, love of your mission, you're going to just start making better decisions, because you care about the organ that makes you you.
Wow. All right, let me unpack this. So number 1, brain envy is this idea of actually caring about the health of your brain. And so do you recommend that you have somebody in mind that you envy? Like, clearly I envy you because you take incredible care of your brain. But is it just this concept that you just actually have to wake up and realize that what's in between your ears is the most important aspect of your health and wellness, period? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And number 2, you then said that there are these micro habits that you have developed, one of which is asking yourself literally throughout the day, is this good or bad for my brain? So let me just role play that one real quick, because you said that like 90% of second graders can answer the question correctly almost all of the time, but we adults get it terribly wrong. So let's just say it's breakfast time. So how do you use this to start to make better choices that help your brain? Like, do you literally go, okay, am I having a cup of coffee or a glass of water? Am I eating like a big piece of toast with tons of butter and all this crap on it? Am I taking my supplements? Like, how does this play out in somebody's day-to-day life, Dr. Amen?
So I used to play a game with my daughter when she was little. Her name is Chloe. And we called it Chloe's Game. And I would say blueberries, and she would say 2 thumbs up, God's candy. And then I would say Frosted Flakes. She'd go, way too much sugar. Or avocados, 2 thumbs up, God's butter. Or hitting a soccer ball with your head. And she would just roll her eyes like, brain is soft, skull is hard. That would be so stupid. And so if you think of the standard American diet, sad, almost everything's bad for your brain. From the toast in the morning, to the sugar cereals, to the donuts, to the pastries, to the coffee with sugar and milk in it. No, those things are not great for the health of your brain. But if you did intermittent fasting and you sort of skip breakfast, well, that's good for your brain.
Why is intermittent fasting good for the brain?
Because it helps your brain clean up the trash that builds up from the day before. There's a term called autophagy, which is cells start to eat the extra trash that built up the day before. And so if you don't sleep, you don't have enough time for the cleaning crew to come and sort of clean up your brain. Intermittent fasting gives you a little bit more time to do that. So breakfast is marketing, and it's actually not essential. Now, for people who might have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, then breakfast really is important. And kids who have ADD, for example, if they have protein in the morning, their medication lasts longer throughout the day. And when you and I were growing up, things like sausage and eggs were common for breakfast, where now, because everybody's on the run, it's sugar-laden cereals, juice. That was the only thing the second graders got wrong when I tested them. So I gave them a list of 20 things, and I'm like, good for your brain or bad for it. And the only thing they got wrong was orange juice, which they put in the good category, but it's clearly in the bad category, because when is it rational to have the sugar from 4 oranges? It's not rational.
That's true. It makes a lot of sense. What are 3 micro habits that have the biggest impact on the health of your brain, other than asking yourself, is this good or bad for my brain?
So I start every day with today is going to be a great day. Because once you get the physical functioning of your brain healthy, you then have to program it. And so I knew I was going to talk to you. It's the first thing that came up in my mind. So I start every day. And if you have children, it's really good to do this at breakfast, which is if you have breakfast. So why is today going to be a great day for you? Directing your mind, which for many people, because of evolution, they wake up in a negative state. It puts your brain in a positive state. And then my favorite of all the habits I do is when I go to bed at night, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well today? And I go on a treasure hunt. And I actually start from the very moment I woke up, looking for what was right about the day. And I've done this now 7 or 8 years. And even the night my dad died, about 2.5 years ago, and it was an awful, awful day. I did it because it was my habit, right? The brain is lazy. It does what you nudge it to do. And so it really helped me, even in a really hard time. But it's almost my favorite time of the day because, like you, I'm busy and great things will happen and I'll just not really focus on it. But it's that treasure hunt that is just so good. And then I take my supplements every day because we live in a nutrient deficient society. And I always want to give my brain the nutrition it needs so it can serve me rather than derail me.
Is there one supplement that you believe everybody should take for better brain health?
Well, a couple, multiple vitamin, a really high quality multiple vitamin. I make one called Neurovite Plus. Brand new study showed people with memory problems who were headed to darkness when they took a high quality multiple vitamin, within a matter of months, their memory was better. So,
What?
yes.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. So you're saying that a high quality multivitamin can not only improve your memory, but if you're sliding on a slippery slope toward memory loss, research shows that it can actually bring memory back?
Yes, brand new research just came out. They're actually comparing it to placebo and cocoa extract, chocolate. And they were hoping the chocolate would do it. It wasn't the chocolate, it was the multiple vitamin. And why I developed Neurobite like I did, it has the same dosages of B6, B12, and folate that decrease the conversion of mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Now, I never make a disease claim with supplements, but if this level of B6, B12, and folate did that, I'm going to put those levels in our supplements.
Wow, I'm going to start popping it like candy is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that we link to that study and that we link to the supplements that you make as well, just so that people can check it out. That's incredible. So a multivitamin has a huge impact. I hear a lot about fish oil too.
And that would be number 2. I did a study at Amen Clinics and we found 98% of people had suboptimal levels of omega-3 fatty acids unless they were supplementing, because we don't have the same level of fish consumption we had before. Plus, fish is tricky. Brand new study out of Florida International University, so not very far from where I am today. They looked at bonefish off the coast of Florida. On average, they had 7 pharmaceutical medications in their tissues. And I'm like, no way. And the most common were antidepressants. So as humans, excrete the medications they take into, waste plants, that gets out into the ocean. And then the fish we eat are impacted by them in a negative way.
Whoa.
So one reason I like high quality fish oil, because it's purified, especially ours, but also omega-3 fatty acids have been found to be good for your heart, good for your brain, good for your hair, good for your skin, good for your eyes.
Why is it good for the brain?
25% of the nerve cell membranes in your brain are made up of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're deficient, your brain is not going to work as fast and efficiently as it could. And low levels have been associated with all sorts of bad things, from depression to dementia to ADHD.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.